For 2 long years, I genuinely thought I was doing everything right, and my feet still burned like they were resting on hot coals every single night without fail. I'm Robert. I'm 83 years old, diabetic for over 2 decades now, and I want to tell you about the food I finally stopped eating, a food most people, myself included, believed for years was genuinely one of the good ones. I still climb my own stairs without gripping the railing. I carry my own groceries in from the car in one trip, no resting halfway. I want you to know that up front, because what I'm about to tell you only matters coming from someone who actually lives inside it. Here's the confusing part that took me years to untangle. I wasn't eating candy bars or soda at night. I was eating what the label called whole grain bread, and a bowl of granola most mornings that a box proudly called heart healthy. I felt like I was following the rules, and my feet burned anyway, every single night, bad enough that I dreaded getting into bed. The mechanism behind burning feet in diabetes has a real name. It isn't mysterious, even if nobody explained it to most of us. When blood sugar runs high for a long stretch, glucose molecules attach themselves to proteins throughout the body in a process called glycation, something researchers have studied since the early 2000s as one of the central mechanisms behind diabetic nerve damage. This particularly affects the long nerves running to your feet, the farthest point from the center of your body, producing the burning, tingling sensation so many of us know. Research has consistently linked chronically elevated blood sugar to this kind of nerve damage. So if the mechanism is chronic high blood sugar, the obvious question is, what was still spiking mine if I thought I was eating carefully? The answer turned out to be sitting right there on my breakfast table and my dinner plate, the whole wheat bread and the granola. If your feet burn at night, or go numb, or feel cold no matter how many socks you wear, please don't ignore it. I almost did, and I'm 80 years old. For years I told myself it was just age, the tingling, the heaviness in my legs climbing the stairs. But it wasn't age. It was my blood sugar quietly damaging the nerves and the circulation in my legs, and almost nobody warned me in time. If you let it keep going, those little signals turn into something you can't undo. I wasn't willing to lose my feet or my independence. So I started doing one thing every single day to help support healthy blood sugar and protect my legs. I'll show you exactly what in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. Here's what almost nobody tells you at the grocery store. Many products labeled whole wheat are made mostly from refined flour with a small amount of whole grain added, colored to look darker, and priced at a premium for the word whole on the front. And granola, marketed for decades as a wholesome breakfast, is frequently loaded with added sugar in the form of syrups and dried fruit coatings, turning what looks like a health food into something that spikes blood sugar nearly as fast as a bowl of frosted cereal. This is exactly the kind of hidden glycemic spike research on glycemic index has documented for years. Foods that look modest on the outside but behave like sugar once digested, feeding the exact process that damages nerves over time. I stopped both. Not all bread, not all breakfast, just those two specific healthy-sounding culprits that were quietly doing the most damage. I replaced the bread with a smaller portion of a dense, minimally processed sourdough, which tends to produce a gentler blood sugar response, and I replaced the granola with plain eggs and a handful of berries. Your doctor almost certainly never walked you through your cereal box ingredients or explained the difference between true whole grain and marketing language. Not because they don't care. A typical appointment runs somewhere around 8 minutes, barely time to review your numbers and adjust medication, let alone read labels with you at the table. That conversation falls through the cracks of a system stretched thin, visit after visit. I want to be honest that cutting those two foods wasn't the whole answer by itself. It worked best as part of a small system. Alongside it, I take a short walk after dinner, since movement in the half hour after eating helps pull glucose out of the bloodstream through a pathway that doesn't need insulin. I do 2 minutes of ankle circles and calf raises before bed, activating the natural pump in my calf muscles that keeps blood moving through legs that would otherwise sit still for hours. And a few nights a week, I soak my feet in warm water with Epsom salt, which some research links to improved local blood flow along with a modest, absorbable amount of magnesium, a mineral many people with type 2 diabetes are documented to run low on. These days, I sleep through whole nights without waking from the burning that used to interrupt me 2 or 3 times before dawn. I still drive myself to see my old army buddies once a month, something plenty of people my age can no longer manage on their own. A woman named Bhavna Chowdhury wrote to me not long ago, 66 years old, a retired pharmacy technician from Sacramento, diabetic for 12 years at that point. She told me she'd been eating whole grain toast every morning for a decade, convinced it was one of her healthiest habits, while her feet burned worse every year. When she checked the actual ingredient list, refined flour was listed first, ahead of whole wheat. She swapped it out for real whole grain bread, added the evening walk, and 30 days later told me the burning had noticeably calmed down, not vanished completely, but calmer, and for the first time in years, she was actually falling asleep without fighting through it. I share her story as an honest example, not a promise. Everyone's body is different, and this works alongside medical treatment, never instead of it, never as a replacement for whatever her own doctor had already prescribed. Let me tell you exactly how I read a label now, because that's the skill that actually changed things, more than any single food swap. I flip the bag over and look at the ingredient list, not the front of the package. If the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour, or simply wheat flour, it doesn't matter what the front says. That's a refined flour product wearing a whole grain costume. I look for 100% whole wheat flour, or whole grain, listed first, not third or fourth. For anything marketed as granola or a healthy cereal, I check the sugar line specifically. Anything with more than about 6 or 7 grams of sugar per serving is, in my book, dessert wearing a breakfast costume, no matter how many almonds are pictured on the box. It took me embarrassingly long to start doing this. For years, I trusted the front of the package the way I trusted the label on a prescription bottle, as if someone official had already checked it for me. Nobody had. The words whole grain, heart healthy, and natural aren't regulated the way people assume, and companies know that shoppers rarely flip the bag over. Once I started reading labels honestly, I found 2 or 3 other foods in my own kitchen that were doing the same quiet damage. A granola bar I ate most afternoons, a store-bought salad dressing sweetened more than I ever would have guessed. I didn't overhaul my whole diet overnight. I just stopped trusting the front of the box, one product at a time, and let the ingredient list make the decision instead of the marketing. None of what I've described replaces your doctor's plan. If burning feet have been part of your nights for a while, that's worth raising at your next visit, not as a substitute for your treatment, but as something to add to the same conversation. I think often about the people my age still walking their neighborhoods every morning, still climbing into their own cars, still showing up for their grandchildren without needing a ride, and the ones who've quietly stopped, who now wait on someone else for things they used to do without thinking. The gap between those groups is rarely dramatic. It's a grocery list, examined honestly, that either changed or didn't. I don't say any of this to shame anyone for trusting a label. I trusted those same labels for years. The food industry spends enormous amounts of money making refined products look like health food, and most of us were never taught to look past the picture on the front. Once you know to look, though, you can't easily unknow it, and that's exactly the point. It's not too late to read your own labels differently. The burning that felt permanent to me for 2 years responded once I stopped feeding the exact thing making it worse, and it didn't require giving up bread or breakfast, only giving up the version of them that was quietly working against me. If you made it this far, you already understand more about your own legs than most people your age ever will. That matters. You know now that the burning, the numbness, the cold feet, they trace back to one thing: blood sugar slowly working against your nerves and circulation. And you know the goal isn't a miracle. It's protecting your ability to stand, to walk, to stay independent. That's why, alongside everything I showed you today, I use a simple daily support to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range, so my legs keep carrying me where I want to go. I put the free presentation in the description below. Go watch it. And as always, keep working with your doctor. This supports your routine. It doesn't replace it. Tell me in the comments if you've ever been fooled by a healthy label the way I was, and which one it turned out to be. I read every one. And if this made sense to you, subscribe, because there's more of this coming.